Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, podcasting again from my home in Ma'ale Adumim. I am pleased to report that Jerusalem and all of Israel have returned to some of their pre-pandemic levels of activity. We are not quite all the way there yet, but we are on the way. Perhaps we are seeing the light at the end of the long tunnel. The Parsha this week is called Bamidbar, meaning in the wilderness. It is the first Parsha in the fourth book of the Torah, which is also called Bamidbar. It deals with the general census of the Israelites as they were beginning their wanderings around the Sinai Peninsula and the lands in the south and east of Israel. It also gives a somewhat detailed plan of their encampment around the Tabernacle, which including which tribes were located in which direction. There were 3 tribes in each cardinal direction as they camped and as they wandered. The tribe of Levites, who were to be the priests, surrounded the tabernacle inside of all the other tribes and served as a regiment of guards, both to protect the tabernacle and to protect the rest of the people from the dangers of approaching the tabernacle. The tabernacle, it seems, was not just a structure building plan. It also served as a conduit for a strange kind of power or force that was of The Torah itself is rather unclear about the nature of this power, other than repeatedly stating that it was filled with the glory of God. Why this should make the tabernacle hazardous is not the least bit clear. What is clear is that the presence of God, whatever that may mean, is not something that should be treated lightly. Throughout much of the first, second, and third books of the Torah, and throughout much of the rest of the Bible, we see this fact of reality. First in the tabernacle, and then in the temples, there were various levels of holiness which could be entered by progressively limited numbers of people. The more intersections could be accessed only by the Kohanim, the temple priests, who were a subset of the tribe of Levites. The very core of both structures, called the Holy of Holies, could only be accessed by the high priest or Kohen Gadol, and even by him on one specific day of the year. This was serious business. It happens that on Thursday night and Friday of this week, we celebrate an event that has little connection to ancient Israel and the Bible, and every connection to modern times and international politics. This event is commemorated on what is called Yom Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem Day. It commemorates the unifying of Jerusalem in Jewish hands for the first time in over 2,000 years. This took place on the last days of the Six-Day War in 1967. The battles were fierce and many lives were lost. In the end, Israel was victorious in a manner that was deemed at the time to be near miraculous. To this day, many Jews consider this to be a modern-day miracle. This is why Yom Yerushalayim is celebrated with such emotion. This year, owing to the coronavirus pandemic, the celebrations will likely be kept to a minimum. In spite of this, in the minds of many, this military and spiritual victory cannot be limited to mere large gatherings of people with speeches and fireworks. This was a unique moment in the long and frequently tortured history of the Jewish people, and to some degree in the history of the world. It is not every day that a nation endures to see the reuniting of its most precious place within the hands of its people after a 2,000-year hiatus. Such an event of near impossibility. But it happened 53 years ago, and we are living the result today. To understand of Jerusalem, one has to go back to the Bible. But even there, things are a bit murky. Jerusalem is not mentioned in the Torah, meaning the 5 books of Moses. It first comes up deep in the book of Joshua, in a rather unheralded listing as one of the many cities under Canaanite control that would be conquered by the Israelites in the coming battles. In fact, throughout the book of Joshua, through the next book of Judges, and through much of the succeeding 2 books of Samuel, Jerusalem only comes up in passing as some sort of small town of no great significance. It is only in the 2nd book of Samuel that we read about King David taking it as his capital, that it begins to gain the great renown for which it would later become known. David wished to build the temple there as a replacement for the tabernacle, which had been destroyed early in the 1st book of Samuel. After a period of about 50 years, during which the functions that had been performed in the tabernacle were done in other places or not at all, it was time for a more permanent structure. This was what the temple was to be. But for reasons that are a little vague, David was told that he was not to be the builder of the temple. Rather, it was to be his son, who of course was the famous Solomon. In the 4th year of his reign, he began the major project of building the temple. All told, it was a 7-year process, finally completed in the 11th year of his reign. The dedication ceremony was done in classic Solomonic splendor, complete with countless offerings and long prayers of praise and thanks to God. The final step of the long process was the installation of the Ark of the Covenant, the by then ancient mysterious cabinet built to house the tablets that were carved on Mount Sinai. The Ark was placed in its inner sanctum at the very core of the temple, as it had been in the tabernacle. From that point onward, it was seen only by the high priest when he entered the forbidden room of the Holy of Holies. This was the culmination and purpose of building the temple. It was meant to house the Ark of God and thus serve as a dwelling place for God's presence. The first temple lasted for about 410 years, according to Jewish tradition. It was destroyed in the catastrophic war with the Babylonians in 586 BCE. The second temple, which was built almost a century after the destruction of the first, was constructed on the exact same place as the first. This easily identifiable location is highlighted by a large rock upon which sat the Ark of the Covenant. For the past 1,300 or so years, a Muslim shrine has surrounded this rock called the Dome of the Rock. The Muslims recognize this rock and this place as particularly holy, and for this reason built their own shrine on this very spot. Jerusalem Day commemorates the return of this spot into Jewish hands after so many centuries. During much of that time, Jews were forbidden to ascend to the Temple Mount, the large rectangular walled-off area upon which the temples had stood thousands of years ago. To this day, many Jews will not enter this entire area, even though most of it was simply surrounding land that had none of the holiness of the temples. Such are the whims of Judaism. Tradition carries a great deal of outsiders, but those who will not enter this area are also guided by a fear of trespassing upon places that they are forbidden to go. Even those who do enter share this fear and do not take their visits lightly. This is not one more stop upon the Israeli tourist trail. The reason for this fear is something that is unique to religion and extremely common in religions around the world, including Judaism. Idea of holiness of a specific place. To the non-religious mindset, nothing could be more foolish than the notion that a place, a spot, could possess this mysterious and nebulous property of holiness. It is just a place and nothing more. No matter what is or was done on this spot does not, according to this view, bestow any such holiness upon the place. In fact, according to this view, there is no such thing as holiness to begin with. But to the religious, and certainly to many Jews, nothing could be further from the truth. The idea that a place can attain this mysterious quality of holiness rests at the core of religious belief, just as the Ark of the Covenant rested at the core of the temple. By our deeds and through our beliefs, we can endow even a place on the earth with a sense of the presence of God. This is why the temple and its surroundings were considered holy. Even though the temple is gone and there are no solid plans of rebuilding it, the holiness never departed. The famous cry of victory that went up towards the end of the 6-day war, Har Habayit Beyadenu, which means the Temple Mount is in our hands, still resounds in the memories and minds of religious and non-religious Jews. More than taking over neighborhoods that had been inaccessible to Jews for the previous 20 years, it was the Temple Mount that represented the true victory of that war. For it was that place, more than any other, including the rest of Jerusalem, that possessed the mysterious holiness of which we have spoken. However, this does not mean that other parts of Jerusalem do not share some of this holiness. Jerusalem possesses its own holiness, which is distinct from that of the Temple Mount. And this holiness is also celebrated on Jerusalem Day. A city so shaped and carved by ancient and modern battles and prayers, upon which so much of history and religion has been founded, cannot lose its power even after centuries of neglect. To a lesser extent, by no means insignificant, the rest of the land of Israel shares some of this holiness. A land which has served as the ancient foundation of monotheism and was seen for millennia as the center of the world, retains its holiness throughout whatever trials and tribulations that took place upon it. Some things are permanent. Holiness of place is not something that happens by magic, though it may seem to some that such is the case. It occurs when human beings create it and endow it through their actions, both physical and spiritual. It may not last forever. It may vanish as soon as the act is over, but it may linger on in that place long after the participants in the action have gone and long after their memories are nothing more than distant recollections. Somehow those actions have become embedded into the place, much as the foundation stones of a building have become embedded into the ground, even though any trace of the building has long since vanished. Perhaps that holiness is preserved in the earth of the place itself in some mysterious manner. Or perhaps it is preserved in the of those who consider this place to be holy. Such memories and such beliefs are not mere wisps of thought that vanish like deleted posts on Facebook. They live on in the minds of individuals and the collective mind of a people. It is those memories and those beliefs and this holiness that we celebrate on Yom Yerushalayim, on Jerusalem Day. Let its memory be a blessing for the future. Shabbat Shalom.